Hi everyone, thanks for joining me here on another Facebook Live. I'm Dr. Alexis Conason and I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, which is why diets don't work and what we can do instead. I've pretty much dedicated my entire career to helping people get off the diet bandwagon. I think it's incredibly harmful, and I've seen a lot of really awful effects of chronic dieting, both physically and emotionally in people. And there's a better way. There's a different way. We don't need to suffer the way that we're suffering when we're dieting. And that's why I created my program, the Anti-Diet Plan, which is a 6-week program designed to help you get off the diet cycle, stop feeling just immersed in patterns of self-hatred and feeling out of control with food, and just like get out of our own way to start to listen to our own body, because I truly believe that our body has a tremendous amount of wisdom that can be used to guide our eating, and the problem is that most of us aren't really listening to it. So I'm gonna dive into that a little bit more today. If you're watching live, please feel free to say hello. Let me know where you're watching from, because it is a cold one out there. I know we're in the middle of this polar vortex. New York is like, I don't know, about 20 degrees or something, but I know there are people who have it a lot worse than we do. So I'd like to kind of know how you're staying warm today. Feel free to share that in the comments. I know I'm planning on having some hot chocolate. That's my favorite way of staying warm. And I'm wearing kind of a warm, comfy outfit, even though I'm at work. I think we get a free pass on getting to dress down a little bit on days that it is just frigid outside. So if you're here live, or if you're watching the comments, feel free to say hi. Let me know where you're from and how are you staying warm today. So I'm going to jump right into it. Actually, I'm going to introduce myself first. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Alexis Conason. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm in private practice here in New York City. I'm also the creator and founder of the Anti-Diet Plan, which, as I mentioned, is a 6-week program, now completely virtual. It's completely available online to help you stop dieting and start to listen to your body again. So it uses the tools of mindfulness meditation and mindful eating from a completely weight-inclusive perspective, which means that we focus on how to feel your best in your body now. We don't think, it's not about losing weight or trying to change ourselves, but rather how can we really accomplish everything that we have put, as a long-term goal, and start working towards those things right now. How to have better health, happiness, pleasure, joy, satisfaction, how to have all of those things in our life right now in our current body. I know it can be kind of a revolutionary thought to realize that we don't need to change ourselves. We just really need to change our mindset, not our body. So that's what my program is all about, how to change our mindset and develop a healthier relationship with food and our body. There's about 3 days left to register for this cycle. We're going to be having our first live group call next week, Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. I hope that you'll join me. It's a really wonderful program. I've poured truly my heart and soul into this, trying to come up with something that I think will really help you make some significant changes in your relationship with food and how you see your body, and ultimately how we relate to ourselves. Because if we don't feel good about how we're eating, we don't feel good about our bodies, it's really difficult to feel good about anything else in our life. And I think this is a really epidemic problem, because most women don't feel good, and a lot of men too. I think it's like 50% of men, 91% of women don't feel good about our bodies. And that means that there are most women out there who don't feel good about themselves. And that stops us, I believe, from really being able to participate in the world as actively and as fully as we can. Now, I know people say, well, but I know a lot of women who hate their bodies, who are dieting and, very successful in the world. And I get that. I have a lot of extraordinarily remarkable, successful, amazing people that I see in my practice as well. But just think about what we'd be doing if we weren't spending all that time hating ourselves, if we weren't spending all that energy dieting and thinking about how to change our body. Then imagine what we would be doing. I mean, that blows my mind. So I think that when we can free ourselves from dieting, we really do open ourselves up to a whole host of new possibilities of how to engage with the world and really how to make some pretty profound changes in a world that I think needs a lot of changing. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. So anyways, I want to go into a little bit about why diets don't work, because We're told that they do, right? We turn on the TV or any kind of social media, like we're bombarded with advertisements for dieting, telling us it's really so simple that if we want to change our bodies, all we have to do is eat less and exercise more, and we can achieve this ideal that we're told is going to bring us not only a thinner body, but a healthier body, a happier life, more success, a better partner. All of the hopes and dreams get tied up in changing our body. And it's not true. So when we actually dig in and look at the science, and I spent about 10 years of my career working in obesity research, so I'm pretty familiar with the science on this. When we really look at what the science says, it's not so easy. The calories in, calories out model is basically a crock of crap. It's not supported by any kind of scientific evidence. In fact, what happens is that when we lose weight, our body adapts and goes through physiological and metabolic changes to help maintain that baseline weight. So what ends up happening is that the most predictable long-term outcome of dieting is actually weight gain. So when we go on a diet, we usually, oftentimes people will lose weight in that initial period, whether it be a few weeks or a few months after the diet starts. But usually within that first year, we're going to start regaining the weight. And typically the weight will go back up past where we started, and then we'll go on another diet plan, lose the weight again, it'll creep back up. This is the predictable cycle of dieting. We can't just look at the part, I think that we have such a tendency to say, oh, but this diet worked for me because I lost weight on it. But we have to look at what happens long term, what happens in the 5 years after you start the diet, 10 years after we start the diet. The natural cycle is short-term weight loss followed by long-term weight gain. And we have to hold that in mind. And I think that one of the sneakiest things that diet culture has done is actually made us blame ourselves for the fact that these plans don't work. So we'll tend to say, okay, when we were successful, when we were losing weight, then the plan was working. But then, I got lazy, I got, distracted with this, I got busy with work, I couldn't keep it up, and that's my fault, right? So we look at the weight gain and we blame ourselves, which is, a incredible marketing tactic from the diet industry and a really horrible thing for our sense of self-worth. And it's also just not true, because this is what happens in between 80 to 95% of the cases where someone diets, is that they will follow this pattern of initial weight loss followed by long-term weight gain. And when it's happening to between 80 to 95% of people, it's not that there's something wrong with 80 to 95% of the people. It's not that 90% of our population is lazy or weak-willed or not motivated or undisciplined, not at all. And remember, these are the same people who are incredibly successful and, motivated and disciplined in every other area of our life. So it's not just that everybody's failing in this one area. It's that the product that we're using, the whole premise of dieting, is designed to fail. That is the basic outcome. And the whole dieting industry is a business that is completely dependent on repeat customers. So you go into a Weight Watchers meeting, how many people are there for the first time? Right? Typically, it's people who've done Weight Watchers 4 times, 5 times, 8 times, 10 times. And it's because it doesn't work. The average dieter goes on between 4 to 5 diet plans every single year, right? So if dieting worked, we'd go on one plan, it would work, we'd get the results we wanted, lose the weight, keep it off long term, move on with our lives, end of story. I would be out of business, and I would be happy to be out of business because we wouldn't have an epidemic of people wasting their precious time, energy, and mental resources and anguish around this issue. And I would be happy to sacrifice my career for that greater good of the world. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. What happens is that we kind of spin our wheels going again and again. And one of the reasons that dieting doesn't work is because restricting what we eat actually leads to overeating. So there's also a ton of research that examines this, and if anyone's interested, you can sign up for my free 5-day program, which goes into a little bit about, I think in day 2, goes into a little bit about the research behind the science that it shows that dieting doesn't work, and it's because of this phenomenon that when we restrict our eating, we are going to feel much more out of control of their food. So there's research that shows that, for example, when dieters experience a craving, those cravings are going to be more intense, more harder to resist, and about I think it's 70 to 80% of the time, they are going to eventually eat that food. And then what happens is that we have this all or none way of thinking, so that when we do eventually eat the food, which happens in the vast majority of the cases, we feel like we've blown it, we've gone totally off track, and we say, what the hell? I've already had this slice of cake, I've already had this pasta on my keto diet, and now screw it, who cares? I might as well go all out. And then we find ourselves eating, that can easily evolve into a binge. We can find ourselves eating in ways that feel completely out of control. And then again, we blame ourselves, even though, and I think this is really like what's up with that in our culture, that we blame ourselves for this expected natural outcome. But we do. We blame ourselves and we say, oh, I can't believe I did that. I'm disgusting. We get really lost in cycles of self-hatred. And then we say, okay, I know what the answer is. I have to go back on a diet. And, we double back down on the diet plan. And that's where we see this pattern of weight cycling, where, we lose weight, gain it, lose it, gain it, lose it, gain it, which takes a tremendous toll on our physical well-being and our emotional well-being. Weight cycling has been linked with a lot of problematic outcomes, including increased risk for cardiovascular disease, increased risk for metabolic disease, diabetes, early death. I have a whole list that I presented in the masterclass. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to share those references with you. But it's not a pretty picture. And then let's talk about the psychological outcomes, because those kinds of chronic patterns lead to increased risk of eating disorders and disordered eating, increased risk of mood disorders like depression and anxiety, body image dissatisfaction, weight stigma internalization, which is kind of we take all of those negative things that we think about people at higher weights and we turn them on ourselves. It's just not a pretty picture. It doesn't lead to good places. So that is what happens basically with dieting. So what I want to introduce is, okay, we can kind of see, hopefully, that dieting, we're working within a failed paradigm. We're working within a framework that is never going to give us what we think it is, right? It's a marketing ploy. It's lies that we've been told that kind of sell us on the idea that it's our fault, that keep us preoccupied with trying to fix our bodies instead of focusing on other things that might be important to us in the world. And it's insidious. So when we can kind of see that this is actually not the best plan, and then we can open our eyes to trying to do something new. And that's where I come in. So in my 6-week mindful eating program called the Anti-Diet Plan, we spend the first week really unpacking why diets don't work. Actually, sorry, the second week we spend really unpacking much more detail about why diets don't work, but also why it's so hard to leave diet culture behind, because we can rationally understand, yeah, diets don't work, this is not doing it for me. Yet we get pulled back into it. And I can't tell you how many people I work with, years down the road, where they really tried to embrace, mindful eating, intuitive eating, come to accept their body. And those ads are still so alluring. They will get targeted for a Weight Watchers commercial or a Jenny Craig or whatever it is and say, oh, I know that dieting doesn't work, but Weight Watchers isn't really a diet anymore, and it's going to bring me all these things that I want. And part of the reason that it's so hard to leave diet culture behind is because we live in a completely fat-phobic culture. So we live in a culture that teaches us that if we are at higher weight, that means that we're somehow inferior, we're treated inferior, we are subject to widespread discrimination and bias with very little laws to protect us. It's a hard world out there. So I totally get why dieting feels very alluring, and why we want to try to change our bodies in order to feel more accepted, to get the things, that we're told, especially, the medical, the bias in the medical field as well, that really links weight and health, even though the science doesn't support it. There's just a lot out there that really pulls us towards weight loss, and often through dieting. So we really unpack that in week 2 of the Anti-Diet Plan program. But then what we can do instead is mindful eating. So mindful eating is, and I like to preface that, mindful eating, I believe, needs to come from a completely weight inclusive place of working to accept our body as it is right now, get out of conflict with ourselves, stop fighting against ourselves so that we can kind of get out of our own way and just listen to those really important natural signals that our body's sending us. So things like, when are we hungry? When have we had enough to eat? When do we feel satisfied? What kinds of foods do we enjoy? How do we make choices around foods? How do different foods affect our body? And also expanding towards having not just a more fulfilling relationship with food, but in week 6 of my program, we really get into how to have a more fulfilling life overall, that when we can free ourselves from dieting, then we can think about how can we really take the best care of ourselves possible and live a life that is full of pleasure and joy. And we talk about reconnecting with community and reconnecting with passions and connecting with our higher values in life. I think a lot of us live in a way where we say, if I asked you abstractly, like, what are the things that are really important for you, important to you in your life, and you got to list those top 3 things, and then we think about how much time do we actually spend in our day-to-day lives working towards those things or focusing on those things. It's totally disproportionate, and especially when we struggle with issues around food and body image, very few of us, we really talk about what are the ultimate things that are most important to us in life. Like, typically it's like, family, friends, having a sense of community, a sense of purpose and meaning in life. Very rarely do people say, I want to be remembered at my funeral for being a size 6. She maintained a perfect size 6. No, those aren't the things that are truly important to us, but the proportion of our time that we spend spinning our wheels, obsessing over how to get that ideal body is totally out of whack. So I think that really healing from our relationship with food is about freeing ourselves from spending all of that time and energy hating ourselves and hating our body. And then what do we do with that? How can we engage with the world in a different way? And I think that's one of my favorite parts about guiding people through this journey away from disordered eating is the freedom that it gives to engage with the world in a totally different way. And I love watching clients go off and, start being activists in the field or engaging in really creating political change and creating social change. It's just amazing what we can do when we all of a sudden have that extra space in our mind, right? Show up for our kids in totally different ways, for our families in totally different ways. It's really transformative. So, my program, the Anti-Diet Plan, is all about how to get there, how to get from point A, which might be being pretty stuck in diet culture, or even, maybe in those early stages of wanting to explore mindful eating or intuitive eating, but you've read the books, you've kind of done it before, and the changes aren't integrating into your life in the way that you want them to. My program is designed to help you, help take you from point A, and then we move step by step how to get to point B. How to move away from diet culture, how to develop a more peaceful relationship with our body, how to hear what our body is telling us. That's really important. How to tune into what I call our internal navigation system or our internal GPS, and that is our body's innate wisdom. It is built in. We don't need like a Fitbit or a calorie counting app. Like, our body holds that wisdom to tune in with that, program that is hardwired into every single one of us. And I know people out there are going to say, but, I don't have that. My body's really broken. It's not working. I'll say, like, almost everybody thinks that. I've never actually seen that with somebody. So maybe you'll prove me wrong, but let's test it out. And we go through towards how to listen to our body, how to bring back pleasure again in our relationship with food, because food should be enjoyable. And then how to expand that and bring back pleasure in our lives overall. So how to deal with emotional eating that feels problematic, how to actually deal with the emotions that come up that drive us to use food to try to move away from the feelings, like how to really, because when we do that, we are not meeting our emotional needs. We're kind of neglecting what we need emotionally. So how to truly care for ourselves emotionally, how to truly care for our bodies in ways that bring us joy, and how to have a sense of pleasure in our bodies, and how to have a sense of pleasure in our life overall. So that's what I really work on in my program. I am there. It's heavy on support. It is really about having me kind of guide you and be there with you each step of the way. I'm offering 2 packages right now to complete the program. One is the self-study package, which I added in recently because a lot of people were saying, this program seems so amazing. But unfortunately, I'm looking at a different time zone, or I just don't want to do any kind of like live support component. So I'm offering now the self-study package. It's a more affordable package. It's like about half the price of the VIP package, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And it's a way for you to learn all of the tools of the anti-diet plan. You get basically everything that's in the VIP program except for the weekly group coaching call. So if you do the VIP program, you get to meet with me every week for 1 hour. We sit down and chat as a group via video conferencing to just talk about like how the program's going for you, how you're making these changes in your life, how we can help you make the changes in your life, and how we can best support you as you move to make these really radical transformations. So I happen to think that's a very important part of the program. I know it's not for everybody. If you don't want the live group coaching calls, you do have the option to go through the program self-paced, or if you do want the group coaching calls, we offer that as well in the VIP program. Whichever track you do, you will get loads of support from me, either through the group coaching calls. If you do the VIP package, you also get a free 30-minute strategy call with me to help you kind of figure out how to maximize, how to get the most that you can out of the program. And then for both programs, you will get tons of access to me through the Facebook group, which I check daily. So if any questions, any issues come up, I'm right there with you. So that is one thing that I think really differentiates this program from other programs is that we're super heavy on support. I think that support is a key element in making change. As a psychologist, I know that it's really hard to make changes on your own. It's much easier when you have the guidance of an expert and a supportive community. Those have been shown to be really key factors in making changes. So I want to offer that, and I think those are really important things. It's also one of the few programs that's out there from a psychologist that's run from a emotional perspective. It's not just about what we're eating, but about how we're eating and how we're feeling. So there are some really wonderful things about the program. I hope you'll take a minute and check it out. You can learn more about it at theantidietplan.com. And we only have about like 2 or 3 more days until registration is going to close. We have some spaces still available. I'm hoping to get some more people on the journey away from dieting, because I think that this is something we need to reach a critical mass with. And I think the more people we can educate and help, lift us out of diet culture, just the better it is for everyone, really. Like, I think I think this can change the world. I really do think that getting, a critical mass of us to stop hating ourselves and to develop a more peaceful relationship with ourselves, to learn meditation and mindful eating, I think it really has a lot of potential. So I hope you'll join me on the journey. We start next week. Registration closes this Friday. If you have any questions at all, I am here to answer your calls, to answer your questions. Feel free to email me. That's the best way to reach me, info@drconison.com. And if you are like wanting to do the program, but you have an obstacle, there's something in your way, either you're concerned about the price and maybe you're in a place of financial hardship or you're not sure if you can make it work or not financially, if you aren't sure if you can make it work with time and scheduling, call me. We can talk it out, and I'm always open to trying to come out with solutions because I want this program to be accessible. So I am dedicated to working with you, as much as I can to try to make this program accessible and work for you so that the most people possible can join me in this journey to food freedom. So thank you for joining me today on Facebook Live. I will see you next week, and I look forward to having you here with me. Take care. Thank you, and stay warm. Bye.